The rain-slicked streets of Los Angeles gleamed under the sodium glow of streetlights, the kind of night where the city felt alive with secrets. Ji-eun Kim gripped the steering wheel of her old sedan, her knuckles white against the chill that seeped through the cracked window. At 28, she had built a life of quiet routines, nights spent poring over medical journals in her cramped apartment, days navigating the fluorescent-lit halls of the county hospital. Her mother's warnings echoed like a half-forgotten mantra. "Stay away from men like him, Ji-eun. They take everything and leave shadows." But shadows had a way of finding her anyway. It started with a phone call, the kind that shattered the ordinary. Her shift had just ended, the antiseptic tang of the ER still clinging to her scrubs when her phone buzzed on the passenger seat. The number was blocked, but the voice on the other end was smooth, accented with the clipped precision of someone who commanded without raising volume. "Ms. Kim, this is Detective Hargrove with LAPD. We need you to come in for a statement. It's about your family, something from the past." Ji-eun's heart stuttered. Family? Her mother had been gone for 5 years, taken by cancer in a quiet hospice room, leaving behind only faded photos and unspoken regrets. The drive to the station blurred into a haze of taillights and honking horns, the distant hum of the freeway underscoring her unease. By the time she parked in the shadowed lot behind the precinct, the rain had picked up, drumming against the roof like impatient fingers. Inside, the air was thick with stale coffee and printer ink. Detective Hargrove, a wiry man with tired eyes and a rumpled suit, met her in a dimly lit interview room. No Miranda rights, no cuffs, just a folder slapped onto the metal table. "Your mother's maiden name was Park, correct? Soo-min Park." Ji-eun nodded, her throat tight. The detective slid a grainy photo across the table. A young woman laughing in a sunlit garden, arm linked with a man whose face was half-turned, sharp jawline and dark eyes that seemed to pierce even through the faded print. "That's her," Ji-eun whispered, tracing the edge of the photo. "With who?" Hargrove leaned back, the chair creaking. "Your father, or at least that's what the records suggest. He was Min-ho Kang, a mid-level player in the Korean syndicates back in the 90s. Import-export, if you believe the official line. But we both know what that means. Shipping lanes, backroom deals, the works." He paused, watching her face. "Your mother cut ties when she found out she was pregnant, raised you alone, changed her name, vanished into the suburbs. But Kang, he never stopped looking." Ji-eun's mind reeled, the room tilting like a bad dream. All those years of vague stories about a businessman father who left too soon, lies to protect her or to bury the truth. "Why now?" she asked, voice steady despite the storm inside. "What's this got to do with me?" The detective's expression hardened. "Kang's son, your half-brother if the timelines match, turned up dead last week. Overdose, they say, but the coroner flagged inconsistencies. Bruises that don't fit, a burner phone in his pocket with your number punched in last. Someone's tying up loose ends. And now, there's interest from higher up the chain, a man named Dae-sung Lee. He's taken over Kang's old territories. Word is, he's asking about you." Dae-sung Lee. The name landed like a punch. Even Ji-eun, buried in her world of sutures and patient charts, had heard the whispers. The Korean Mafia's rising enforcer, a ghost in the city's underbelly, docks where containers whispered of smuggled goods, warehouses that echoed with the low buzz of encrypted radios. Her mother had drilled the name into her like a curse. Avoid him at all costs. He's poison wrapped in silk. Ji-eun had dismissed it as immigrant folklore, the kind of cautionary tale every Korean-American kid heard about the old country's shadows spilling into the new. But now, as Hargrove handed her a printout of a shipping manifest, names redacted but roots tracing back to Incheon, doubt crept in. The detective's voice cut through. "Lee's people have been spotted near your apartment. Black SUVs, tinted windows, the usual. You need protection, or at least a heads up. This isn't random, it's personal. Ji-eun left the station with the folder clutched under her arm. Rain soaking her coat as she dashed to her car. The engine coughed to life, wipers slashing at the downpour. Her phone lit up again. Unknown number. She almost ignored it, but curiosity, that old traitor, won out. "Ms. Kim," the voice said, deeper than Hargrove's, laced with a soul inflection that sent a shiver down her spine. "We need to meet. It's about your legacy. Come to the Lotus Garden on Wilshire. Tonight. Alone." She should have hung up, should have driven straight to a friend's, or back to the hospital for a double shift to drown the noise. But the photo burned in her mind. Her mother's smile, the man beside her who might be blood, and beneath it all, a pull she couldn't name, like the tide dragging her toward the docks where secrets washed ashore. The Lotus Garden loomed ahead, its neon sign flickering through the storm, a high-end Korean fusion spot tucked between skyscrapers. Valet in crisp black, the scent of gochujang and sizzling kalbi wafting from the entrance. Ji-eun handed over her keys, her pulse racing, as a hostess led her through velvet curtains to a private booth. The man waiting there rose smoothly, his suit tailored to perfection, a single gold cufflink catching the low light. Dae-sung Lee. Tall, broad-shouldered, with eyes that held the weight of unspoken wars. "Ji-eun," he said, gesturing to the seat opposite. No title, no formality, just her name, like he'd known it forever. "Thank you for coming. Your mother would have wanted this." She sat, the leather cool against her skin, the murmur of the restaurant fading to a hush. Outside, thunder rumbled, and in the reflection of the window, she glimpsed a shadow shifting in the alley, watching, waiting. What secret could bind her to this man, and why did it feel like the first step into a cage she couldn't see? The private booth in the Lotus Garden enveloped Ji-eun like a velvet trap, the air heavy with the scent of sesame oil and charred beef from the main floor. Soft jazz hummed from hidden speakers, a counterpoint to the storm raging outside, where rain lashed the windows in relentless sheets. Dae-sung Lee settled back into his seat, his movements deliberate, like a predator conserving energy. His face was all angles, high cheekbones, shadowed by the dim lantern light, a faint scar tracing his jawline that spoke of old skirmishes rather than vanity. He poured her a glass of soju from a frosted bottle, the liquid glinting like liquid silver. "You look just like her," he said, his voice low and even, carrying the faint lilt of someone who'd crossed oceans but never fully shed his roots. Su-min, fierce eyes, the kind that see through lies. Ji-eun's fingers tightened around the glass, the coolness grounding her. She hadn't touched the soju yet. Her mind raced, piecing together the detective's warnings with this man's calm assurance. "You knew my mother?" It wasn't a question, but an accusation, laced with the skepticism she'd honed in ER triage rooms. Assess, question, survive. Dae-sung nodded, his gaze steady, unblinking. More than knew. She was. Everything once. Before the syndicates pulled her in. He slid a small envelope across the table, its paper crisp and unmarked. Inside, another photo. Her mother, younger, standing on a foggy Incheon dock, wind whipping her hair. Beside her, not the shadowy figure from Hargrove's file, but Dae-sung himself, slimmer, less hardened, but unmistakably him. No Min-ho Kang in sight. Her breath caught, the room's warmth suddenly stifling. "This can't be right," the police said. "Police lie to protect their version of the truth," he interrupted, not harshly, but with the finality of someone who'd outmaneuvered worse than badges. "Your mother didn't run from Kang. She ran with me. We were partners in the import game, legitimate fronts for moving goods through the ports, electronics, textiles. But rivals sniffed weakness. They came for her, thinking she'd flip. I got her out, sent her to the States with enough to start over. You were the secret we shared, Her daughter by me." The words hung in the air, heavier than the thunderclap outside. Ji-Yun's world tilted again, the booth's partitions closing in, like the walls of a confessional. All those bedtime stories of an absent father, the vague disdain for men like him, had they been shields against this? Her own blood, tied to the undercurrents of LA's Korean enclaves, the hidden networks of Hanjung, the enforcers who patrolled Koreatown's neon veins. She pushed the photo back, her voice a whisper. "Why tell me now, after all this time?" Daesung's expression darkened, the scar pulling tight. "Because the past doesn't stay buried. Kang's death wasn't clean. His son, your half-brother through a different line, was leverage. Rivals from the old guard, the Che family out of Busan, they're circling. They know about you now. That burner phone call? It was a plant to draw you out. But I won't let them touch what's mine." The possessiveness in his tone sent a chill through her, sharper than the rain. Mine. Like she was cargo on one of those shipping manifests, not a woman who'd clawed her way through med school on scholarships and night shifts. She stood abruptly, the chair scraping against the polished floor. "I'm not yours, or anyone's. I came for answers, not a claim." He didn't rise, but his hand shot out, gripping her wrist, not hard, but firm enough to halt her. His touch was warm, calloused from years of handling more than ledgers. "Sit, please. The street's not safe. My team's outside, but they've spotted a tail, unmarked sedan 2 blocks back. Che's scouts, likely running plates on anyone who gets close." Ji-Yun froze, glancing toward the window. The alley shadow she'd glimpsed earlier had multiplied. Now, headlights pierced the downpour, idling too long at the curb. Her pulse thrummed in her ears, the restaurant's murmur fading to white noise. She sank back down, autonomy warring with the raw fear knotting her gut. "How do I know this isn't a setup? You could be the threat." A ghost of a smile touched his lips, not amusement, but something weary. "If I wanted you gone, you wouldn't be here sipping soju. Your mother made me promise. Protect our daughter no matter the cost. That's my code. No innocence, no family caught in the crossfire." He released her wrist, sliding a burner phone across the table instead. "Call Hargrove if you want, but he'll confirm the Che hits, 3 in the last month. All tied to loose ends like you." She didn't touch the phone, but the seed of doubt took root. The detective's folder had mentioned inconsistencies, redacted names that now screamed of deeper webs. As if on cue, her own cell vibrated in her pocket. Hargrove's number. She answered, voice tight. "What now?" "Kim, get out of there," he barked. The precinct's fluorescent buzz audible in the background. "We pulled CCTV from your building. Black SUV circled twice last night. Plates traced to a shell corp in Long Beach, Che fronts. Lee's legit on this. He's been feeding us tips to keep you clean." The call ended with a click, leaving Ji-Yun staring at Daesung. Legit. The word tasted like ash. He gestured to the hostess, who appeared like a shadow, murmuring about a private exit. "My driver will take you home, or wherever you need. But think on it, Ji-Yun. The secret we share isn't just blood. It's survival. Che won't stop at warnings." They moved through the back corridors, the scent of ginger and steam, giving way to the metallic tang of service alleys. Daesung's arm brushed hers as they slipped into a waiting black Lincoln, engine purring low. The driver, a stocky man with an earpiece, nodded once, pulling into the storm-swept streets without a word. Rain blurred the city lights into streaks, but in the rearview, Ji-Yun caught it. The unmarked sedan, weaving through traffic, headlights like predator eyes. Daesung leaned close, his breath steady against the chaos. "They'll back off if they see you're under my watch. But tomorrow we talk more. About the ledgers your mother left. Codes that could end this." She met his eyes, the pull between flight and the unknown tethering her in place. The car accelerated toward the freeway, but the sedan's taillights lingered in the mirrors. What had her mother hidden in those ledgers? And how deep did this shared blood run before it drowned them both? The Lincoln sliced through the downpour like a shadow, tires hissing over wet asphalt as the freeway lights blurred into golden streaks. Ji-eun pressed against the leather seat, her heart pounding in sync with the wiper's frantic rhythm. Dae-sung sat beside her, his posture relaxed but alert, one hand resting on the armrest as if the pursuing sedan were just another Tuesday inconvenience. The driver, Kang, his name had been murmured earlier, glanced in the rear view, his earpiece crackling faintly with terse Korean updates. "They're gaining," Kang said, voice gravelly, accelerating into the next lane. The unmarked sedan surged forward, its high beams cutting through the rain like accusatory fingers. Ji-eun caught a glimpse of its plate in the mirror, partial, mud-splattered, but enough to note the California tag ending in 47. Common enough, but in Hargrove's world of shell cores, it screamed rented anonymity. Dae-sung's jaw tightened, the scar along it pulling like a warning. "Take the exit for the docks. Lose them in the containers." He turned to Ji-eun, his eyes locking onto hers with an intensity that made the confined space feel smaller. "Breathe. We've shaken worse tales than Che's amateurs." She wanted to snap back, to demand he pull over and let her out into the storm, anything to reclaim the illusion of control. But the sedan's engine roar drowned out her pride, and the reality of her apartment's vulnerability hit harder than the thunder. "This is insane," she muttered, clutching the burner phone he'd given her. "You drag me into your world, claim some blood tie, and now we're running like criminals. What if Hargrove's wrong? What if you're the one I should be running from?" His response was a low chuckle, devoid of humor. "Your mother said the same. Once thought I was the poison. But she learned trust isn't given, it's earned in the fire." He pulled out his own phone, thumbing through a secure app that lit his face with a blue glow. Running plates now, that sedan's leased to a Long Beach outfit, Che's laundry front, for moving cash through fake seafood imports. They've been hitting old Kang associates, tying off threads before they expand into our lanes. The car veered sharply onto the industrial exit, the skyline giving way to the sprawling port of Los Angeles. Sodium lamps cast harsh pools of light on towering stacks of red and blue containers, the air thick with the briny tang of the sea and diesel exhaust. Kang navigated the labyrinthine roads with practiced ease, weaving past rumbling semi-trucks and idle cranes that loomed like skeletal giants. The sedan followed, but the maze worked its magic. A sudden left into a shadowed service road, and the headlights vanished behind a wall of steel. They pulled into a nondescript warehouse on the edge of the yard, its corrugated walls rattling under the gusts. Floodlights snapped on from hidden sensors, illuminating a chain-link gate that swung open automatically. Inside, the space was a far cry from the grime outside. Polished concrete floors, banks of monitors glowing along one wall, the faint hum of generators underscoring the scent of oiled machinery and fresh coffee. Two guards in dark jackets nodded as Kang killed the engine, their radios whispering static. "Welcome to one of my offices," Dae-sung said, stepping out and offering her a hand she ignored. The rain pattered on the metal roof like distant gunfire, amplifying the isolation. Ji-eun followed him to a glass-walled office overlooking the docks, where the Pacific's waves crashed against concrete pilings, foam white under the storm's fury. She sank into a chair by a long oak table, the wood scarred from years of urgent meetings. Dae-sung poured 2 cups from a thermos, black coffee, steaming and bitter, before sliding a leather-bound ledger across to her. Its pages were yellowed, edges frayed, filled with meticulous Korean script and columns of numbers that danced like encrypted code. "Your mother's work. She handled the books before she left. Hidden accounts, routes that bypassed customs. Nothing illegal on the surface, but enough to make rivals salivate. Che wants this. With Kang's son dead, they think it's airless. But it's yours. Ours. Jiun flipped it open, her nurse's eye scanning for patterns amid the chaos. Dates from the 90s, shipments from Incheon to LA, silk, electronics, but underlined entries hinted at discrepancies, quantities that didn't match manifests, coded references to family cargo. Her finger traced a line, a transfer to a suburban trust, dated around her birth. She funneled money here? For me? Dae-sung nodded, leaning against the desk, his suit jacket open to reveal a holstered pistol that gleamed dully. To keep you clean. No shadows on your life. But Che's been digging. Old contacts, hacked records. That burner call to your half-brother, it was them planting your number to flush you out. Hargrove's tips came from me. I couldn't risk direct contact without confirming your... Receptive. Receptive. The word grated, fueling the fire in her chest. She slammed the ledger shut, standing to face him. Receptive to what? Being your pawn. I have a life. Patience, shifts, choices. Not this. She gestured wildly at the monitors, where CCTV feeds showed empty docks patrolled by silent figures. You say, no innocence. But look at us. Hiding in a warehouse because of your code. My mother's warnings weren't about poison, they were about cages. His eyes softened, just a fraction, the possessiveness yielding to something raw. Regret, perhaps, or the echo of lost years. Cages can protect as much as they confine. Sumin chose autonomy once, and it nearly cost her everything. I won't force you, Ji-yoon, but blood isn't a chain. It's a shield. Walk away if you must. But Che won't ask nicely. A buzzer sounded from the monitors, Kang's voice over the intercom. Perimeter alert, SUV circling the outer fence, no plates visible. Could be a probe. Dae-sung's hand went to his phone, barking orders in rapid Korean. The warehouse lights flickered as backup generators kicked in, the storm outside masking any approach. Ji-yoon's pulse raced, the ledger's weight in her lap suddenly heavier. She glanced at the page she'd marked, a subtle tell in the numbers, a guard rotation code that matched the dock's schedule. If Che had this, they'd own the port. As shadows shifted on the feed, Dae-sung moved to her side, his presence a barrier against the unknown. Stay close, we'll ride this out. But in the tension's grip, Ji-yoon wondered, was the real threat outside, or the secrets in the ledger that bound them tighter than any fence? And what would decoding her mother's final entry cost them both? If you're enjoying this story so far, tell us in the comments where in the world you're watching from. The warehouse's air grew thicker with the metallic tang of ozone as the storm battered the roof, each gust rattling the chain-link perimeter like a warning. Ji-yoon's eyes darted between the ledger in her lap and the bank of monitors, where grainy footage captured the SUV's slow creep along the outer fence. Its tires crunched over gravel, headlights dipping low to avoid the floodlights. But the infrared picked up heat signatures, two figures inside, one scanning with a handheld device that could be a jammer or worse. Dae-sung's voice cut through the hum of the generators, low and commanding into his phone. Seal the east gate. No lights on the approach road. Let them think we're dark. He pocketed the device and turned to her, his frame blocking the office door like a human barricade. They're testing us. Che's style. Probe. Distract. Strike when the guards rotate. Ji-yoon's fingers trembled on the ledger's cover, the leather worn smooth from years of secrecy. Her mother's script stared back at her. Elegant Hangul loops hiding arithmetic that could unravel empires. This rotation code, she said, voice steadier than she felt, pointing to the marked page. It lines up with the port's schedule. If they get this, it's not just shipments, it's control, access points, blind spots in surveillance, everything. He nodded, a flicker of approval crossing his features, softening the hard lines of his face. Soo-min was brilliant at that, saw patterns where others saw noise. She coded it to protect the family roots. Ours, not Kang's. But Che's been reverse engineering old manifests. They know enough to come sniffing. The monitors beeped, a third figure exiting the SUV, cloaked in a rain-slicked poncho, moving toward the fence with bolt cutters glinting under the sodium glow. Kang's voice crackled over the intercom. "Intruder at Sector 3. Engaging non-lethal." Muffled shouts echoed outside, followed by the sharp crack of a stun round and a body thudding into the mud. The SUV peeled away, taillights vanishing into the labyrinth of containers, but the damage was done. A section of fence sagged, clipped just enough to signal they could breach if they wanted. Dae-sung exhaled, rubbing the scar on his jaw as if it ached with old memories. "They're close, too close. We need to move you, somewhere they can't predict." He reached for the ledger, but Ji-eun pulled it back, the gesture instinctive, a reclaiming of the autonomy her mother had fought for. "No," she said, standing to meet his gaze, the coffee's bitterness lingering on her tongue. "This is mine to understand, not just hand it over like some inheritance I didn't ask for." The words hung between them, charged with the push-pull of their shared blood and her fierce independence. She flipped to the final entry, a cryptic note scrawled in the margin. "Blood debt settled in shadows. Trust the rivers bend." No numbers, just a reference to Incheon's Han River, or perhaps LA's own concrete channels snaking through the city. His eyes narrowed, curiosity overriding the tension. "The river!" She mentioned it once, a safe house drop point, back when we ran diversions through the ports. Che's ancestors used it too, before the syndicate split. If that's the key, it unlocks a ledger within the ledger, hidden transfers, untraceable. Ji-eun's mind raced, piecing it with Hargrove's file, the redacted shipping routes, the inconsistencies in Kang's death. My half-brother's overdose. Was it staged to look like that? To force this out? She paced the office, the concrete cool under her shoes, the distant crash of waves a rhythmic underscore to her thoughts. Outside, guards' radios buzzed with updates, the storm masking any lingering threats. Dae-sung watched her, his possessiveness tempered by respect, a man accustomed to commands yielding to her quiet authority. Possibly the bruises Hargrove mentioned. Classic Che work, pressure points to mimic a fall. They wanted the sun to talk, but he didn't. Now you're the loose end. He stepped closer, not crowding, but close enough for her to catch the faint scent of his cologne, cedar and salt, mingled with the warehouse's diesel edge. "We decode it together. No cages, Ji-eun. Partnership, like your mother and I had." The offer tugged at her. Loyalty clashing with suspicion, the ethics of her world, save lives, not enable shadows, warping under the weight of truth. She nodded once, reluctant, and they bent over the ledger as Kang entered, wiping rain from his jacket. Perimeter secure, but they're bold. Spotted a drone earlier, scanning for heat. We roll out in 5, convoy to the penthouse. The drive out was a tense blur, the Lincoln sandwiched between two unmarked SUVs, headlights cutting through the downpour like knives. Ji-eun clutched the ledger, her mind decoding fragments, riverbend coordinates matching a Long Beach warehouse, access codes tied to guard shifts that Che could exploit. Dae-sung's hand brushed hers in the dim interior, a silent anchor. But she pulled away, the conflict simmering. Trust him or run to Hargrove with the evidence? They ascended to his penthouse atop a Koreatown high-rise. The elevator humming smoothly past restricted floors, keycard access clicking like a heartbeat. The space unfolded in sleek minimalism, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the glittering sprawl, the scent of polished teak and faint jasmine from a hidden diffuser. Security hummed, cameras in the corners. A panic room door disguised as a bookshelf, but it felt less like a fortress and more like an invitation. Dae-sung poured matchily from a chilled bottle, the rice wine milky and sharp. "To decoding," he toasted, but his eyes held deeper intent. They spread the ledger on a glass table, cross-referencing with his tablet's encrypted maps. Patterns emerged. A network of safe houses along the LA River, diversions using staged blackouts to slip shipments. But the final entry resisted, a behavioral tell, perhaps, in the script's slant, hinting at a betrayal within. Ji-yoon's phone buzzed. Hargrove, text only. Che-hit confirmed. Watch your six. Lee's clean, but old grievances die hard. She showed it to Dae-sung, who cursed softly in Korean. Grievances like your mother's escape? They blame me for splitting the syndicates. As thunder rolled, the penthouse lights flickered. Not the storm, but a deliberate pulse, power dipping as if jammed. Alarms didn't sound, instead a soft beep from the elevator. Dae-sung drew his pistol, motioning her behind the couch. Compromised feed. Someone's inside the building. Lobby breach. Footsteps echoed in the hall, muffled but deliberate, and Ji-yoon's heart seized. Was it Che's infiltrator, or a turncoat from Dae-sung's own ranks, drawn by the ledger's promise? The door's lock clicked, and in the shadows, she gripped a letter opener, wondering if the river's bend led to salvation or a deeper trap. The penthouse door creaked open with agonizing slowness. The lock's mechanism, a soft, traitorous whisper in the dimmed light. Ji-yoon crouched behind the sleek leather couch, the letter opener's handle slick in her palm, its edge catching the faint glow from the cityscape beyond the windows. Her breath came shallow, the jasmine scent now cloying, mixing with the sharp tang of adrenaline. Dae-sung moved like liquid shadow, pistol raised in a two-handed grip, his broad frame silhouetted against the glass table where the ledger lay open, pages fluttering in the draft from the hall. A figure stumbled in. Not a hulking enforcer, but a wiry man in a maintenance jumpsuit, tool belt clinking as he caught himself on the doorframe. His face was pale, eyes wide with panic, a trickle of blood marring his temple. "Boss, they're in the lobby," he gasped, Korean tumbling out in frantic bursts. "Elevator override. Che's got a plant in security. Jammed the feeds. Cut the power loop." Dae-sung lowered the pistol fractionally, but his stance remained coiled. "Who? Names, Min-jae." "The guard, Min-jae," Ji-yoon registered, swallowed hard, wiping sweat from his brow despite the chill seeping through the sealed windows. "Park Ji-hoon, your night shift lead. He slipped them a keycard duplicate last week. I saw the handoff at the docks. Thought it was nothing." Min-jae's voice cracked, guilt etching lines deeper than the storm's rumble outside. The LA River snaked visible in the distance, its concrete banks a dark vein under sodium lights, mocking the ledger's cryptic note. Dae-sung's scar twitched, a tell Ji-yoon was starting to read like a patient's vital signs. Anger restrained, but boiling. "Get to the panic room. Lock it down." He turned to her as Min-jae bolted toward the bookshelf door, which slid open with a pneumatic hiss. "We can't stay. Che's not probing anymore. They're extracting." Ji-yoon rose, legs unsteady, the letter opener discarded on the rug. Autonomy screamed at her to grab the ledger and bolt for the stairs, but the flicker of lights, deliberate, a staged blackout, trapped her in the web of their shared blood. "A plant? How deep does this go? If your own security, deep enough to make trust a luxury," Dae-sung cut in, holstering the pistol and snatching the ledger. His hand grazed her arm, guiding her toward the kitchenette, where a hidden panel revealed a service stairwell. The touch lingered a beat too long, possessive yet protective, stirring the conflict that had simmered since the lotus garden. "But we move. The river's bend, your mother's code. It's not just a safe house, it's a diversion point. Old Che routes looped through there, but she flipped them for us." They descended the stairwell in tense silence, footsteps echoing off bare concrete walls that smelled of dust and faint mildew. Emergency lights cast red pools, the building's hum disrupted by distant shouts from below, lobby chaos, perhaps guards clashing with infiltrators. Ji-yoon's mind raced ahead. Decoding the ledger's fragments, the river reference tied to a 1998 entry, a settled debt with coordinates aligning to a forgotten underpass where the LA River met industrial runoff. Not supernatural salvation, but logistics. A blind spot in surveillance where trucks could vanish under covered bridges during storms like this. At the garage level, the air thickened with oil and exhaust. Fluorescent strips buzzing erratically. Dae-sung's convoy waited, 3 black sedans idling, engines low to mask the growl, but one was missing, its spot empty, tire marks fresh and smeared. "Ji-hoons," Dae-sung muttered, signaling Kang, who emerged from the shadows with a submachine carbine slung low. "They've got wheels. We take the tunnels, service roads under Wilshire." Ji-yun slid into the lead sedan, the leather seats cold against her damp clothes, the ledger thrust into her hands like a talisman. As Kang gunned the engine, peeling out into the rain-lashed underpass, she flipped it open under the dashboard light. Patterns sharpened, guard rotations coded as river bends, subtle shifts that Che could mimic to infiltrate shipments. But the final margin note, "Trust the shadows, not the light," hinted at betrayal, a behavioral tell in the ink's pressure, as if Sumin had written it in haste, fearing eyes on her work. "Why hide it from you?" Ji-yoon asked, voice tight over the wiper's slash. Dae-sung met her gaze in the rear view, the passing tunnel's concrete blurring like a cage on wheels. "She didn't. I was the light, the one pushing for expansion." She saw the shadows closing, the internal rot. Che wasn't just rivals. They had hooks in Kang's circle, and she suspected a leak close to us. His tone carried the weight of old loss, loyalty tested by the very code he lived by. No innocence, but how many had slipped through? The pull between them intensified. Her independence clashing with the shield he offered, a romance forged in evasion rather than candlelight. The convoy emerged onto a flooded service road paralleling the LA River, water sheeting across the windshield, the channel's rush a thunderous roar. Headlights pierced the murk, but then brake lights ahead, an unmarked van blocking the bend, figures deploying with military precision. Che's crew, rain ponchos gleaming, armed with suppressed rifles. A shot pinged off the sedan's hood, non-lethal warning or miss, but enough to swerve Kang into a skid. "Ambush!" Dae-sung barked, drawing his pistol as the car fishtailed. Ji-un's heart hammered, the ledger pages scattering across the seat. Kang floored it, ramming the van's side, metal screeching in a shower of sparks. The convoy's flank vehicles laid cover fire, controlled bursts into the air, adhering to the code, but one guard took a graze, blood blooming on his jacket. They broke through, the van crumpling against the riverbank, but pursuit ignited. 2 motorcycles roaring from the shadows, weaving through the flood. Dae-sung leaned out the window, firing precise shots that forced one rider into the channel's edge, bike vanishing in a splash. The second clung, gaining, until Kang veered into a construction detour. Barricades of orange cones and half-dug tunnels, the environment turning hazardous with mud-slick turns and jammed exits from the storm's debris. In the chaos, Ji-yun spotted it on a scattered page. A ledger code matching the underpass coordinates, revealing a hidden access code for a nearby safe house, her mother's final safeguard. "There!" she shouted, pointing to a rusted gate half-submerged. Kang punched it in via his earpiece relay, the gate grinding open just as the motorcycle closed in. They piled into the derelict boathouse, the river's chill seeping through cracked walls, the scent of brackish water and rust overwhelming. Dae-sung barricaded the door, his breath ragged, eyes scanning her for injury. "You decoded it. That's the bend. Safe for now." But as the motorcycle's engine faded, replaced by the wail of distant sirens, Hargrove's tip-off perhaps, Ji-yun realized the cost, exposure, the ledger's secrets half unveiled, and a turncoat's shadow lingering. She faced him, the space between them electric with unspoken vows. Partnership, you said. But what if the betrayal's closer than Chai? What if Minjai's not the only one watching? His hand cupped her cheek, thumb tracing her jaw, the touch a promise amid the peril. Trust earned, but fragile. Outside, the river bent onward, carrying their secrets, but the true flood was the one rising within. Loyalty demanding sacrifice, and a shared blood that could either bind or betray. The boathouse groaned under the assault of the storm, its weathered timbers flexing like old bones as the LA River surged against the pilings below. Water lapped at the concrete foundation, carrying the salty reek of urban runoff mingled with diesel from sunken debris. Ji-eun pulled away from Dae-sung's touch, her cheek tingling where his thumb had lingered, a spark of warmth in the damp chill that seeped through the walls. The ledger's scattered pages lay on a rickety workbench, illuminated by the erratic beam of a battery lantern Kang had rigged, casting long shadows that danced like conspirators. Dae-sung's eyes searched hers, the intensity unbroken, but he stepped back, respecting the invisible line she'd drawn. The betrayal, it's not just Minjai, he said, voice a low rumble over the river's roar. Your mother's note. She knew. The ink pressure varies here, see? He knelt by the pages, his fingers tracing the margin without touching, as if the script might crumble under too much scrutiny. Heavy strokes on shadows, written in anger or fear. She suspected someone in our inner circle, feeding Chai intel on the river routes. Ji-eun crouched beside him, the cold floor biting through her jeans, her nurse's precision kicking in to analyze the tells. The slant of the hangul suggested haste, a subtle irregularity in the loops matching entries from years earlier, cross-referenced with a faded receipt tucked in the ledger's back, time-stamped to a Koreatown meeting in '98. This, she murmured, pulling out the slip, it's a valet ticket from the Lotus Garden. Same night as one of her coded transfers. If she met a contact there... His jaw clenched, the scar pulling taut. Or a traitor. I handled security that night, blind spots in the alley cams, guard rotation. I approved myself. The admission hung heavy, loyalty fracturing under the weight of hindsight. Outside, the wind howled, whipping rain against the corrugated roof in sheets that drowned the distant wail of sirens. Kang paced the perimeter, his carbine at the ready, earpiece feeding updates from the convoy's remnants. One vehicle lost in the skid, the grazed guard stabilized but out. Ji-eun's pulse steadied as patterns emerged, her independence fueling the decode rather than yielding to fear. The river's bend isn't just coordinates, it's a ledger key. These numbers align with tide charts, shipments timed to floods for cover. Che could flood the channels deliberately, jam exits with debris, trap anyone using them. She sketched a quick map on a scrap of paper from the bench, lines converging on an old industrial tunnel beneath the underpass, a natural choke point, realistic logistics turning the environment into a weapon. Dae-sung watched her work, admiration flickering in his gaze, softening the possessiveness that had defined their encounters. You're her echo, sharp, unyielding. He reached for the lantern, adjusting it to steady the light, their shoulders brushing in the confined space, a pull neither acknowledged, yet neither retreated from. The air between them thickened, charged with the unspoken, trust as a fragile bridge over the abyss of betrayal, her ethics clashing against his code of restrained power. A crackle from Kang's radio shattered the moment, static-laced Korean, urgent. Boss, inbound, 2 boats on the river, low profile, no lights. Thermal shows 4 heats, chase scouts probing the boathouse access. Dae-sung was on his feet in an instant, signaling silence as he moved to the grimy window, peering through salt-streaked glass. The river churned black and furious, whitecaps foaming under the storm's fury, but faint silhouettes cut the current. Sleek inflatables, engines muffled to a whisper. hulls slicing toward the dock like predators scenting blood. "False alarm or diversion," Jiun whispered, folding the map into her pocket, the ledger's core now committed to memory. Her mind raced to contingencies, triage the threats, prioritize escape without graphic fallout. Daesung's hand hovered near her elbow, protective instinct overriding command, but she shrugged it off gently, asserting the autonomy that defined her. "We can't hole up. If they jam the tunnel exits with that flood, we're boxed." He nodded, the decision mutual, a tentative partnership blooming amid the peril. "Kang, prep the extraction boat, hidden in the slip. We slip the river, head for the mansion upriver. Hargrove's sirens are cover. He'll run interference." They gathered the pages swiftly, stuffing them into a waterproof pouch from Kang's kit, the rustle underscoring the ticking clock. As they edged toward the rear dock, the first boat's motor growled closer, a spotlight sweeping the murk, catching glints off rain-slicked metal. The extraction vessel was a low-slung speedboat, camouflaged under tarps, its engine idling with a subdued purr. They boarded in a rush. Ji-yun sandwiched between Daesung and Kang, the fiberglass deck slick underfoot. Kang throttled up as they cast off, the boathouse receding into the gloom, but the pursuing boats accelerated, cutting the distance with ruthless efficiency. Bullets skipped off the water, suppressed rounds, warnings more than kills, splashing foam that stung like needles. Hard left, into the channel fork. Daesung shouted over the wind, gripping the rail, his body shielding hers instinctively. Ji-yun leaned into the turn, the boat banking sharply, engine whining as it plowed through a debris field, branches and urban trash swirling in the current, a natural hazard amplified by the storm. One pursuer clipped a log, veering wide, but the second closed, its spotlight pinning them in harsh white. In the chaos, Ji-yun's phone vibrated. Burner, Hargrove's line. She answered, wind whipping her hair. "Kim, Che's got a mole deeper than we thought. Ji-hoon's handoff, traced to your father's old ledger keeper. They're after the full decode. River codes mean control of the ports for months." The Kolkata as a wave slammed the hull, water flooding the deck, but the revelation landed. The betrayal rooted in legacy, a past loss, Su Min's escape, fueling present vendettas. Daesung's eyes met hers across the spray, the shared secret now a double-edged blade. "We end this at the mansion, full extraction, my team's waiting with manifests to counter theirs." But as the second boat rammed their wake, forcing a desperate swerve into the tunnel's maw, dark, concrete arch looming, exits potentially jammed by rising waters, Ji-un gripped the pouch tighter. Victory loomed, but at what cost? Exposure of their blood tie, or the sacrifice of the code that bound him? And if the mole was closer than Ji-hoon, who would turn the river's bend against them next? If this tale already has you hooked, hit the like button. It helps us bring more hidden stories to light. The tunnel's concrete throat swallowed the speedboat whole, its arched walls echoing the engine's guttural roar like a beast in pursuit. Water sprayed in cold sheets, the river's fury amplified in the confined space, carrying the acrid bite of mold and stagnant runoff. Ji-yun braced against the gunwale, her knuckles white on the waterproof pouch, the ledger's secrets now a lead weight in her lap. Daesung knelt beside her, pistol drawn, scanning the darkness ahead, where the second Che-boat's bow cleaved the foam, its spotlight fracturing into shards against the dripping ceiling. "Jam the signal! Kang, hit the ECM!" Daesung ordered, his voice cutting through the din like a blade. Kang fumbled with a compact device clipped to his belt, a black market jammer that hummed to life, static crackling over the radio as it disrupted the pursuer's comms. The spotlight flickered, wavering like a dying star, buying them seconds. But the tunnel forked ahead, a Y-split born of old flood control engineering, left to the industrial outflow, right toward the mansion's private dock. Choose wrong, and the current could pin them against submerged grates, exits jammed by storm debris. Ji-un's mind whirred, cross-referencing the ledger's tide codes with the rushing black ahead. Right fork, she said, urgent but firm, her voice rising above the slap of waves. The entry notes low water at this bend during floods, shallower draft, less drag, left's a trap. Che manifests show they use it for blockades. Dae-sung shot her a glance, surprise mingling with the raw edge of their bond, her independence sharpening the partnership into something electric, undeniable. He nodded, signaling Kang, who wrenched the wheel. The boat lurched right, hull scraping a submerged beam with a screech that set teeth on edge. The pursuer overshot, engine whining in protest as it ploughed left, vanishing into the murk, but not before a burst of suppressed fire stitched the water near their stern, bullets ricocheting off concrete in high-pitched zips. No hits, but the near miss ignited the air between Ji-un and Dae-sung. His hand found her shoulder, steadying, possessive in its protectiveness, while she leaned into it just enough to acknowledge the shield he offered. Loyalty, tested against her unyielding ethics. They burst from the tunnel into a wider channel, the mansion's silhouette rising on the eastern bank. A sprawling estate of glass and stone, its floodlights piercing the gale like defiant beacons. Security boats patrolled the perimeter, rotors whirring low, but the storm masked their approach until Kang flashed a coded light. Docking was a frenzy. Lines thrown to waiting hands, the speedboat hauled into a covered slip, reeking of wet rope and engine oil. Guards in black tactical gear swarmed, subduing the adrenaline with clipped reports. No breaches yet, but drone sweeps showed chase scouts circling the outer roads. Inside, the mansion unfolded in opulent restraint, marble floors veined with quartz, walls lined with abstract ink paintings that whispered of Seoul's hidden alleys. The air hummed with the low buzz of surveillance feeds from a central console, scents of aged oak and simmering doenjang from the kitchens grounding the chaos. Dae-sung led her to a war room off the main hall, its table a sprawl of maps and tablets, the ledger pouch slapped down like a gauntlet. "Decode the rest," he said, shedding his soaked jacket, the holster's outline stark against his shirt. "If the mole's from your father's keeper, it's in here. Old grievances, access codes that let them ghost our rotations." Jian spread the pages. The lantern's glow replaced by recessed LEDs that cast no shadows, her fingers tracing the final entries. Patterns solidified, behavioral tells in the ink flow. A subtle code where Su Min had varied her script to flag insiders. Light strokes for trusted allies, heavy for suspects. One name recurred, buried in a 1999 transfer, HS. River contact, debt unsettled. Initials that matched Hargrove's vague file on a Kang lieutenant, now retired but whispering to Che. This HS, he handled the Lotus Garden handoffs. If he flipped after Mom left, he could have fed them the valet ticket, the rotation blind spots. Dae-sung's face darkened, pacing the room's edge, the scar a livid line under the lights. Hwang Soo-jin. I cleared him myself after she vanished. Thought loyalty ran deep. The confession cracked his code, the restraint of power yielding to the pain of betrayal, a past loss, Su Min's flight, mirroring the present fracture. He stopped before her, close enough for the heat of him to cut the chill, eyes locking with hers, in a moment stripped bare. "You see it too, don't you? The pull, blood and choice, not chains. I won't cage you, Ji-un, but leaving now, it ends us both." Her breath caught, autonomy warring with the trust they'd forged in evasion. The river's bend a metaphor for their path. Twisting but unbreaking. She met his gaze, the conflict raw, her mother's warnings echoing against the legacy he embodied, ambition's prudence demanding she walk, yet suspicion yielding to the bond. "Partnership isn't possession," she replied, voice steady, standing to close the gap. "Prove it. We expose HS together, use the ledger to bait him, draw Che out." A guard burst in, rain dripping from his cap, Boss, perimeter breach. East fence down, no visuals. Looks like a staged fire in the boathouse. Diversion. Alarms wailed faintly, the mansion's lights pulsing as power dipped, not from storm but sabotage. Jammed generators, a blackout creeping from the docks. Outside, orange flames licked the slip, smoke billowing thick, masking figures slipping through the haze. Che's infiltration team, exploiting the river codes they'd half decoded. Dae-sung grabbed a tablet, pulling up live feeds. Shadows darting past sodium lamps on wet lawns, one carrying a satchel that screamed explosives. They're after the full ledger. End the threat at the source. He handed her a vest from a locker, lightweight Kevlar, his touch lingering on the straps, a vow unspoken, protection over command. Kang rallied the team, convoy engines revving in the garage below, but the environment turned hostile. Jammed garage doors from the blackout, exits blocked by rising floodwaters channeling from the river. Ji-eun strapped on the vest, the ledger's pouch secured at her side, heart pounding with the realization. This was no probe, but organized assault, victory demanding sacrifice. As they descended a back stair to an underground tunnel network, mansion's escape veins snaking toward the hills, footsteps echoed above, deliberate and closing. Was HS among them, the mole turning the house against its own? Or had Che anticipated the bait? The river's secrets flowing both ways now? The tunnel's chill enveloped them, but the true cold was the question burning. Could their shared blood outlast the shadows closing in? The tunnel's damp chill clawed at Ji-eun's skin, the air thick with the musty reek of earth and stagnant water, trickling down the walls in rivulets that mirrored the river's relentless push. Dim emergency strips flickered overhead, casting elongated shadows that twisted like accusations as she and Dae-sung hurried forward, Kang bringing up the rear with his carbine sweeping the gloom. The Kevlar vest chafed against her ribs, a reminder of the fragility beneath her resolve, while the ledger pouch bumped against her hip like a heartbeat out of sync. Footsteps echoed from above, faint but multiplying, the mansion's betrayal seeping into the earth itself. Left at the junction, Dae-sung whispered, his breath warm against her ear in the narrow passage, guiding her with a hand at the small of her back. Not possessive now, but urgent, a tether in the dark. The blackout's hum vibrated through the concrete, generators straining against sabotage, and distant shouts filtered down. Korean curses, the clatter of tools prying at grates. Che's team was methodical, exploiting the jammed exits with cutting torches that spat sparks into the night, turning the storm's chaos into their ally. Ji-eun's mind raced ahead, the ledger's codes her map. The tunnel forked again soon, a service vein from the old port expansions. Blind spots where guards rotated every 15 minutes. Flaws Su-min had noted in heavy ink, suspecting insiders like HS. "The grate ahead," she said, voice low and steady, pointing to a rusted barrier half obscured by dripping pipes. "It's a weak point. If they breach it, they flood the whole network, debris and water turning it into a trap." Dae-sung nodded, signaling Kang to cover as he knelt by the grate, punching an access code from the ledger into a weathered panel. It whirred open with a groan, revealing a side chamber, a forgotten utility room stacked with corroded pumps and flickering consoles, the air sharper with ozone from exposed wiring. They slipped inside, barricading the entrance with a toppled cabinet, the metallic scrape echoing like a final warning. Kang monitored his earpiece, static-laced reports confirming the mansion's fall, staged fire spreading, security overwhelmed by the diversion. "They're close," Kang muttered, wiping sweat from his brow, the graze on his arms seeping through a hasty bandage. Thermals picking up 3 in the main tunnel, heading this way. HS leading. From the voice print, Dae-sung's eyes hardened, the scar along his jaw a stark white line in the console's glow. "Bait them. Ji-eun, the secondary code. River debt settled. It unlocks the emergency purge." She nodded, fingers flying over the panel, inputting the sequence. A ledger entry tying HS's initials to a falsified transfer. Proof of his flip years ago. Siphoning funds to Che while feeding intel on Sumin's escape. The console beeped affirmatively, valves hissing as hidden sluices prepared to divert floodwater from the channel above. The grate rattled, prying metal, muffled voices in Korean. The ledgers with Lee. Cut the power fully, flush them out. HS's timbre, oily and familiar from old recordings Dae-sung had shown her. Betrayal crystallized, not abstract but visceral, rooted in the past loss that had shaped them all. Su-min's flight, leaving grudges to fester like untreated wounds. Dae-sung positioned himself by the door, pistol ready, while Ji-yoon flanked with a pry bar from the workbench, her ER instincts sharpening to triage the fight. Non-lethal where possible, survival first. Kang covered the rear, but a sudden jolt rocked the chamber, power surge from the sabotage, lights strobing wildly as water gushed from a cracked pipe, ankle-deep and rising fast. The grate burst inward, HS first, a gaunt man in his 50s, rain-slicked coat hiding a suppressed pistol. Two Cheyen forces behind him, with tactical lights piercing the chaos. "Lee!" HS sneered, spotting him in the flash. "Your code's as weak as your blood. The girl's the key, Su-min's spawn, ledger and all." Dae-sung fired first, a controlled double tap that winged HS's shoulder, spinning him into the wall with a grunt. No kill shot, adhering to his vow, but enough to drop the weapon. The enforcers returned fire, bullets chipping concrete, one grazing Kang's leg and sending him staggering with a curse. Ji-yoon lunged, pry bar cracking against an enforcer's knee, the crack audible over the rising water, buying seconds as he crumpled. "Flush it!" she yelled, slamming the purge button. Alarms wailed as valves opened, river water roaring in from feeder pipes, surging through the main tunnel in a controlled torrent. The infiltrators scrambled, HS clutching his arm. Eyes wide with realization, the ledger's trap, Su-min's final ingenuity, turning the environment against them. Water climbed to knees, sweeping debris and forcing the Che-men back, their lights submerging in foam. Dae-sung grabbed Ji-yoon's arm, hauling her toward a side vent as the chamber flooded, the cold shock stealing breath. Kang limped behind, firing a parting shot that echoed into the rush. They crawled through the vent, emerging onto a rain-swept hillside above the river, the mansion's flames a distant pyre against the storm-lit sky. Sirens converged. Hargrove's backup, tipped by the purge signal, LAPD boats cutting the channel to intercept the remnants. HS was exposed, dragged from the torrent by arriving teams, his confessions spilling under pressure. Years of grudge, selling roots to Che for a cut, the half-brothers' overdose, a coerced silence to unearth the ledger. The threat unraveled, organized and real, but victory carved deep. Kang's injuries requiring triage, the mansion compromised, their world forever altered by exposure. Panting on the hillside, mud caking their clothes, Dae-sung turned to Ji-yoon, the rain washing clean the grime. His hand found hers, not gripping but entwining. The possessiveness yielded to equality. The secret we shared. It's more than blood. It's this, us, choosing the bend together. She squeezed back, the pull resolved into commitment, a future pledged in the quiet after the flood, protection as partnership, trust as the true legacy. In the days that followed, the ledger's codes dismantled Che's network, manifests seized, routes secured through Hargrove's channels, no innocents harmed beyond the cost they'd paid. Ji-yoon returned to her shifts, but with Dae-sung's shadow, a chosen presence. Dinners at the rebuilt Lotus Garden, walks along the river's calmer banks, where loyalty outshone power. Memory wove their found family tighter than any syndicate vow. The adventure's scars faded, but the transformation lingered, a life reclaimed, not from shadows, but through them. Subscribe to our channel for more incredible tales of loyalty, danger, and found family. See you in the next story.